Bonjour à tous and welcome to the final installment in this series of videos on French relative pronouns. Now that you are a grandmaster in all things relative pronouns in French, it's time to tackle what I think are the most complex relative pronouns in the French language, ce qui and ce que, simply because we don't really have an equivalent in English, not grammatically at least, and I'll explain that a little bit later on. First of all, though, I think it's a good idea to remind ourselves of the rules with qui and que, because of course ce qui and ce que both contain the words qui and que, and so the rules are going to be the same. So remember, subject plus qui, object plus que. We did, of course, have the other rule, qui, verb, que, noun or pronoun, but remember, that rule isn't always completely reliable, so I think it's best to stick with this one. But nonetheless, the rule will be the same for ce qui and ce que, subject plus ce qui, object plus ce que. And so the difference is not in the structure, but in the meaning. So let's have a look at some examples to see if we can figure out the difference. Let us begin with, I want to watch a film which is interesting, right? Let's apply the rules we already know. Which is our relative pronoun, the verb is, and a film is the subject of that verb, right? The film is the thing that is interesting. And so in French we will say, je veux regarder un film qui est intéressant. Wonderful, right? That is a simple sentence using the rules that we learned about qui and que. Hopefully by now that should be easy. If not, you should definitely go back and relearn qui and que, because if you don't know qui and que, ce qui and ce que are not worth learning yet. Let's have a look at another sentence. I want to watch a film which is interesting. Now the words here are exactly the same in English. The only thing that makes these two sentences different is a comma, or in the spoken language, the pause, and a little bit of intonation as well. I want to watch a film which is interesting, okay? English uses intonation an awful lot, and sometimes we have things in French which simply don't exist in English because we express them with intonation rather than different words. So what are we actually doing here, right? Well, our relative pronoun is still which, and our verb is still is. But this time we're not describing the film. We're not saying that the film is interesting. We're saying that the fact that I want to watch the film is interesting. So everything that comes before is the object. It's not just a single noun now, it's a whole concept. The fact that I want to watch the film. So for example, this whole sentence could be, I want to watch a film, which is interesting because I don't normally like watching films, right? We're describing the fact that I want to watch the film as interesting, and this is where ce qui and ce que come in. And in the same way as the sentence above, because the fact that I want to watch a film is the thing that is interesting, we're going to use ce qui because it's the subject. Je veux regarder un film, ce qui est intéressant. Okay, so ce qui, in this case, is used to modify an entire concept, an idea, right? Rather than just one word. So now let's look at another sentence. We go to the cinema, which I like a lot. Now I think this is a little bit unnatural in English. I think we'd more likely to say that. We go to the cinema that I like a lot. But I'm trying to prove a point, right? So let's just go with it. So in this case, the relative pronoun is which, the verb is like, the subject is I, and therefore the cinema is the object, right? The thing that I like is the cinema. So I'm saying we go to a cinema and that cinema I like, okay? And in this case, because we have object plus the relative pronoun, we will use que. Nous allons au cinéma que j'aime beaucoup. But what if we wanted to say, we go to the cinema, which I like a lot. Again, the only difference in English is the pause and the comma. But what are we doing? We're saying that the fact that we go to the cinema is something that I like. So our relative pronoun is which, the verb is like, I am the subject, and the whole clause before we go to the cinema is the object. That is the thing that I like, the fact that we go to the cinema, that whole concept. And so in this case, we'll use ce que. Nous allons au cinéma, ce que j'aime beaucoup. Then we have some other uses of ce qui and ce que. Basically, they can also mean that which, okay, which sounds a little bit unnatural in English. In English, we're more likely to say what, but it's important to know that it's not what as a question. This isn't que or qu'est-ce que or quoi. This is what when it isn't a question. For example, what I like to do at the weekend is blah, 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 blah. So here, what is your object, okay, the thing that you like to do. So I am the subject and like is the verb. And in this case, because we have relative pronoun, then the subject will use que. Ce que j'aime faire le week-end, c'est blah blah blah. So if it helps, put it into the more formal English. Say, that which I like to do at the weekend. Okay, it's not very natural, but as is often the case, if you put it into more formal English, you'll get something more similar to what is just normal French, right? How about this one? What is interesting is blah blah blah. So what this time is your subject, right? What is the subject of the verb is, and so we'll use ce qui. Ce qui est intéressant, c'est blah blah blah. So notice the rules still apply. We still have this subject-object thing going on. It's just the meaning is very slightly different. I also like to point out that ce qui and ce que always follow the word tout. So for example, all that I did, okay, so I've already put the colours in here. All is your object, that is your relative pronoun. I, and the subject did is your verb. You'll say tout ce que j'ai fait. I usually tell people this because it's not that natural to say all that which I did. In English, you just say all that I did. Okay, it's just useful to know that tout is often followed by ce qui and ce que. So for an example, with ce qui, I like all that is French. So basically everything that is French I like, okay? It's a very French kind of sentence. You'd say j'aime tout ce qui est français, because tout is the subject of the verb est, right? All is the stuff that is French, okay? So hopefully that video was helpful. As usual, I'm sure you're fed up of me saying it by now, but if you do have any questions, please do leave a comment. I know this one is quite complex and can take some time to get your head around. Of course, I don't have to be the only person that you consult with this. You are quite free to Google it, look it up online, right? There might be some other explanations, because sometimes if it's explained from a different perspective, it can be helpful. So don't feel like you only have to watch this video. Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm your last resort. I don't know. But, consult different resources if you need to, and ask questions as well if you don't understand anything. Thank you for watching this series. I hope it was helpful to you. And as usual, à bientôt.